This is WAB's Week in Review, the show where we look back the last few days of stories from your WAB news team. I'm Alex Helmick, managing editor of WAB News. And on the show today, Affordable Care Act subsidies that have made marketplace health coverage less expensive for millions of Americans are set to expire at the end of this month unless Congress reaches an extension deal. Without the financial assistance, policy group KFF estimates most people's monthly payments next year could more than double.
I'm going to be purchasing what amounts to a catastrophic plan and paying the same amount of money. If I didn't have children, I would very likely not purchase insurance.
Hear how some Georgians are evaluating their options in our series, WAB's Medical Wealth Gap. That's in a few minutes from now. First up, though, Georgia Power says it's reached an agreement with state regulators on a massive expansion plan. The deal covers $15 billion worth of construction. As Emily Jones reported, it was a surprise announcement Wednesday morning.
The deal between the utility and PSC staff also promises to offset future rate increases by more than $8 a month, though that doesn't guarantee bills would actually go down. The Public Service Commission's staff and various interest groups were already scheduled to testify this week on Georgia Power's plan to expand power plants, build batteries, and buy energy to meet rising energy demand, mostly from data centers. Activists turned out to show opposition before knowing about the surprise deal. At a gathering outside the PSC, Emory student Ava Trachtenberg said some of the natural gas turbines Georgia Power wants to build will last decades, even as she worries about climate change now.
In 2075, I will be 70 years old. I hope to have children, even grandchildren by then, and I'm scared for the future I will have to pass on to them.
The commission's staff argues the new deal protects ordinary customers from paying for expensive projects to serve data centers. But critics say the proposal concedes too much to Georgia Power, and they complain the timing gave experts little time to prepare and weigh in. The commission is due to vote on the proposed deal next week. Emily Jones, WABE News.
Well, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis is expected to appear next week before a Georgia State Senate committee that is investigating her for alleged misconduct connected to her prosecution of the now dismissed 2020 election interference case, which included the indictment of President Donald Trump. WAB's Raul Bali told us about it.
Speaking after a Georgia Supreme Court hearing about a previous subpoena from the committee, one of Willis's attorneys, former Democratic Governor Roy Barnes, says the district attorney will appear next Wednesday following a new subpoena.
In the 25 General Assembly, they passed a bill that said that committees can, with approval of the Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor, can have the power of subpoena, which I think is bad practice, by the way, just personally.
Republican State Senator Greg Dolezal is the vice chair of the Senate Special Committee on Investigations.
I'm convinced she'll show up. I hope she'll show up. She was committed to showing up before and did not show up. The real question is whether she tries to hide behind privilege or whether she's forthcoming with the committee into what really happened in her office.
Barnes defended not making previous dates because he was trying other cases and then had a health issue. Raul Valley, WABE News, the Georgia Supreme Court.
A federal judge is ordering Georgia's prison system to provide hormone therapy for transgender inmates. As WABE's Melissa Fato reported, the judge says the state law denying that care violates the constitutional protections against cruel and unusual punishment.
The judge is ordering the state to maintain hormone therapy for inmates who already receive it and to start treatment for those diagnosed as needing it. The case challenges a Georgia law passed earlier this year that banned state funding for certain gender-affirming treatments. Supporters of the law say the state shouldn't have to pay. Georgia began providing hormone therapy in 2016 after a previous lawsuit. Lawyers for the state have already filed notice that they plan to appeal. Melissa Fato, WABE News.
Well, starting next month, Georgia judges will have access to a new tool that'll help them hand down more accurate, appropriate sentences to the defendants standing before them. WAB's Shemaine Cruz had that story.
Currently, there are 159 individual and disparate case management systems that make it difficult to share information between counties, such as defendants' criminal histories, previous mental health treatment, and case dispositions. And it's mostly up to the defendants to volunteer that information. But on Tuesday, Georgia Supreme Court Justice Charlie Bethel told a House subcommittee that the newly created statewide management system is ready to go live.
This doesn't replace anything because there isn't a statewide case management system. In other words, we're not building something that already exists.
So far, 28 counties have opted to make the switch, with a full rollout expected over the next 3 years.
From my perspective, it's important, and I've articulated this, but I'm not the expert, is that we prioritize, number one, superior courts, because that is where part of the impetus for the project is public safety. That's where serious violent felonies are tried.
The system was also designed to serve state and magistrate courts, but not yet municipal courts. And it used American Rescue Plan Act funds in hopes that it'll lead to more efficient data sharing and public safety. Shemaine Cruz, WABE News.
Officials say they're looking into making further improvements at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport and its surrounding residential areas during the annual State of the Aerotropolis address this week. WABE's Dormaya Vance had the story.
Officials with the nonprofit Aerotropolis Atlanta Alliance say they have big plans to expand investments into mobility, real estate, and more. Here's Aerotropolis President and CEO Shannon James.
And our secret sauce is progress through partnership. We're highlighting catalytic sites. We're engaging all of our jurisdictions to identify key sites to move and to activate.
James says they're looking to further develop more of Atlanta's South Side, including making Terra Boulevard a more livable corridor for residents. Keynote speaker and airport general manager Ricky Smith says he's hoping to make improvements like modernizing terminals and expanding ATL's workforce.
Every decision we make about infrastructure, technology, staffing, and flow is ultimately about how we feel and how people feel when they moved through Hartsfield-Jackson.
The airport lost nearly $40 million in federal funding for maintaining its diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. The money would have gone to physical and safety upgrades. However, officials say they're hoping to keep building partnerships and scouting resources for coming projects heading into the new year. Dormaya Vance, WABE News.
You're listening to WABE's Week in Review with me, Alex Helmick. Well, only one of the 50 states has a mandate that those on Medicaid must also work: Georgia. Not for long. By 2027, the federal government will roll out the program nationwide. The Trump administration has set aside money to help states set up an applicant screening system, but if Georgia's experience is any indication, the cash will just be a drop in the bucket. Sam Whitehead is a correspondent for KFF Health News, whose reporting helped lead to a federal investigation into the cost of the Georgia Pathways program. When he spoke to WABE's Christopher Alston, he began by giving a refresher on where the program stands right now.
So Georgia Pathways to Coverage, just to catch people up, is the nation's only active Medicaid work requirement program. It was set to expire at the end of September this year. Then at the last moment, federal officials at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services basically said, hey, Georgia, you've got to get your program in line with these rules in H.R. 1, and that's what the state's working on. There are different exemptions, for instance. So H.R. 1 says you can be exempted if you are a caregiver of a child who is 13 years old or younger. You can be exempted from the Pathways reporting requirements if you're a caregiver of a child under 6 years of age. There's also different verification frequencies. So in Georgia Pathways, originally, the idea behind the program is that you would prove you were working, volunteering, going to school for 80 hours a month when you signed up, and then the cadence would be you'd do that every month. That was scaled back because that was just a big administrative headache for the state to figure out how to do. So now it's at initial enrollment, and when you renew each year, HR 1, you have to report those hours when you enroll and then twice a year after that.
To what extent have you found in your reporting that in crafting the requirements in HR 1 that they kind of took from what they learned in Georgia Pathways, or are they doing that in an ongoing manner?
That is a really interesting question. So we have seen, I do not know the degree to which people at CMS were talking to people in Georgia. My guess is they were. There is an individual named Grant Thomas who used to be kind of number 2 at the state's Medicaid agency. He has now been pulled up to Washington, D.C. and now is working at CMS. My guess is that people up in D.C. saw the experience he had working with Georgia's program and said, hey, that would be valuable. What's, I think, really interesting, too, and maybe answers this question a little bit, is really the kind of leeway that CMS has given Georgia to run this program. You know, our reporting has found that the program has been pretty expensive when it comes to administrative costs. That reporting actually inspired a number of Democratic senators, including our 2 from Georgia, to ask for the Government Accountability Office, the top federal watchdog, to investigate Georgia Pathways. And they found that administrative spending wasn't really taken into account when the program was approved, and that administrative spending didn't have appropriate levels of oversight. So one of the things that I'll be watching as 42 states and Washington, D.C. have to implement these work rules, is CMS going to be able to effectively oversee that kind of administrative spending at that scale if they've been unable to really keep Georgia in line?
And can you talk a little bit more about that? You mentioned them having to scale it back just because of how much of an administrative headache it was. How much was it costing?
So we have found that the Georgia program has cost about $109 million, with the vast majority of that going to administration, right, to building and updating the systems. So that's money that's not going to actually pay for health benefits for people. H.R. 1 does provide $200 million that's going to be split among all these jurisdictions to start to stand up these programs. But you got to consider that's only the kind of first little bit of money that's going to be kind of put towards this effort, right? States are also going to put in some of their own money, and they can draw down some federal match for that too. So, people who are looking at this from the kind of health policy research side have really pointed out that $200 million figure is really only a small drop in the bucket if you think about how much money could be spent on standing up these programs across the country.
That was WABE's Christopher Alston speaking there with KFF Health News correspondent Sam Whitehead. Staying with our Medical Wealth Gap series, New Year's Eve is a key deadline for the roughly 1.5 million Georgians with Affordable Care Act coverage. Enhanced premium tax credits in place since 2021 are set to expire. Unless Congress extends the financial assistance, most people's monthly payments next year could more than double. Open enrollment for next year's ACA Marketplace coverage currently underway. WAB's health reporter Jess Mador looked at how some Georgians are evaluating their health insurance options.
In Duluth, Mary Campbell's house is decorated for Christmas. She's at the kitchen counter with her dog at her feet. Her laptop is open to a website she's visited dozens of times since ACA open enrollment started, Georgia's state-based marketplace exchange.
This is my Georgia Access account. I haven't picked an insurance yet.
Campbell's a small business owner with a store near the Mall of Georgia. She's also a single mom of 2 teenagers. This year, for a high-deductible silver plan, Campbell pays about $1,000 a month. Scrolling through options for next year, she says there aren't many that are doable for her budget and cover their needs. She punches numbers into a calculator.
So if I want the same plan, I will pay $1,100 more a month. Without subsidies is going to be $2,379.
Campbell says if the enhanced premium tax credits expire, she'll have to downgrade to a bronze plan. That'll cost less each month, but has other higher out-of-pocket expenses and covers less.
I'm going to be purchasing what amounts to a catastrophic plan and paying the same amount of money. If I didn't have children, I would very likely not purchase insurance.
But the 52-year-old says she can't take that risk.
I know all too well from having a son who had an experience where he was in the ICU for a week just 4 years ago. I think the bill before insurance was roughly $236,000.
Campbell isn't alone in her sticker shock. Deanna Williams is with the nonprofit Georgians for a Healthy Future. It's her job to help people understand and sign up for health insurance. Since open enrollment started in November, she says she's been getting lots of calls.
If your premium is more than doubling and your income hasn't increased, that's something they're trying to evaluate in their household. And then others are trying to say, well, the cost of this monthly premium is more than what I pay for rent and my bills included.
Numbers back this up. A recent KFF survey finds 1 in 4 adults saying they'd go without insurance if the enhanced subsidies expire. Coverage losses would hit rural communities, low-income people, and seniors hardest. Steve in Metro Atlanta, who doesn't want to use his last name, pays for his parents' health insurance through the ACA marketplace
as a way to get them committed into their health and well-being.
His parents' household income is about $40,000 a year, and so far, Steve says he's been able to afford their monthly premiums himself.
In 2025, they're on the silver plan for Oscar Health. The premium is at $68.53. If I were to keep them on the same plan, their premium would go up to $656.65.
Steve says going without coverage isn't an option. His parents are in their early 60s. His dad recently completed treatment for cancer and needs regular scans to stay healthy. So, with or without the enhanced premium tax credits, Steve says he's planning to downgrade to a bronze plan to keep their basics covered until they can qualify for Medicare. Jess Mador, WABE News.
For more on our medical wealth gap series, as well as many other stories, go to WABE.org. That's all for the show this week. My thanks to the WABE News team for all the great work, and a big thanks to all of you for supporting WABE News during this pledge drive. I'm Alex Helmick. Thank you for listening to the Week in Review.